Okay, so from vision to reality, your business, your retirement, your legacy. So many owners, business owners, spend their careers building their businesses, but when it comes time to plan their exit or retirement, the complexity can get overwhelming. Legal, financial, emotional, all at the same time. Today we have three experts with us to bring a unique lens or perspective to the topic at hand. I'm going to ask the questions I have here. We had some pre-thought questions and answers, and then we'll open it up to the floor, anybody from the room or online to answer. But we're going to start with Darren. You want to introduce yourself, KWB Accounting, 30-second version?
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. So my name is Darren Buma. I'm one of the partners at KWB, and we work exclusively with small business owners, and our objective is to provide the information that they need in order to make some great decisions, both in their business and their personal lives. And that's partly what we're here to talk about today.
So on the lens of business, retirement, legacy, KWB does services in that area?
Oh, yeah, 100%, Jeff. There's the annual tax filing and compliance piece, which is important, but the real magic happens in the longer-term planning and making sure that everybody's set up for an appropriate exit in their business.
Perfect. Then we have Rhonda from Field Law. Rhonda, just give us a 30-second version.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. Thank you online for joining us and in person, and thanks for KWB for this very groovy setting. I'm enjoying it. I am a lawyer, and I practice at Field Law, and I focus on estate planning for families and business owners, and I do a lot of succession planning. Work a lot of collaboration with these folks, and I also do estate administration. So after someone passes, helping the family deal with administering the estate, and also general estate planning, incapacity planning, that sort of things. I'm called in Alberta, BC, and Northwest Territories. A lot of my clients have done well in Alberta, and they need their estate planning in place in Alberta, but then they are smitten with the milder climes, and I think we might even have a few people in BC online right now. And it calls. We love the warmer climate there, but BC does things quite differently from a probate and estate planning perspective. So helping clients that straddle the provinces is a lot of what I focus on.
Perfect. And Sean from Blueprint Planning Group.
Awesome. So I work at Blueprint Planning Group. We sit in the kind of financial planning chair, I guess, of the team here. We build living plans that work with our clients through all stages of their lives. Obviously, everyone's plan involves a retirement, we're going to hope. And for most of our business owners, we're highly involved in that transition from, working every day in the business to enjoying the fruits of their labor. During that process, we find that a lot of the time we do need to coordinate with the legal and accounting team that they're dealing with, because if all the pieces aren't coordinated, they're not going to usually get the full value out of that transition. So.
Perfect. So let's get into the discussion. I always like to think of, what don't we know, right? When we're a business owner, we're focused on our business, and there's things that are in our blind spots, things that are like, we kind of ignored, possibly didn't even know about, maybe consciously ignored just because we've been so busy. But Darren, I'm going to start with you on this one. What's one of the biggest financial surprises that you see that catch business owners off guard when they begin thinking about transitioning or winding down or moving to the next stage?
Yeah, great question. Specifically talking about the financial side, because there of course are all sorts of topics to deal with when thinking about that. But on the finance side, it's from our perspective, it's really the taxation that probably catches most people by surprise. And there's a number of layers there. It might be if you're selling your business or transitioning that business to the next generation. What is your corporate structure? What assets are in the corporation? Are you intending to sell everything that's in the corporation? Is there stuff that you need to get out of the corporation? Because that can lead into access, or maybe you being denied access to the lifetime capital gains exemption. And that's probably one of the most significant tax saving events for a small business owner if they're able to sell their corporation, sell the shares of their corporation. to the tune of about $300,000 of tax savings, per shareholder on maybe a little over $1 million or $1,250,000 worth of value. So we want to, have conversations early in the process with people to say, okay, well, what is the plan? Are you selling your corporation? Are you selling assets of your corporation? Are you just winding down? Like maybe you're, closing the doors, there's nothing to sell, but you've accumulated a lot of wealth in the corporation. What's the plan over retirement or even with death, to extract those funds in the most tax efficient manner?
Perfect. And so Rhonda, some of the surprises, blind spots, I think you used the word stale documents.
Right.
So share with me, what do you mean by stale documents or lack of documents, and why does this matter?
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. I see that a lot, is that when I meet with clients, by that point they've kind of made a decision that they want to do something about their estate planning. But when I talk to them about the process to the point where they get to me, what they tell me often is that we have a false sense of security that most of us do our documents on sort of the big first adulting chapter where we get married, we buy a house, we have small children. I've got to get my will in place. So we do it then. But then we live in this false sense of security that I got that document by, and it's not perfect, but I've got it, and so at least it's okay. And on the triage of rushing through life, it's lower priority. It's always important, but lower priority. And one of the things that the law does is it strongly presumes that if I put something in writing, it is my current wishes, and if I want to change it, I must change the document. So if I've got a document that's 20 years old, the law is going to say, well, that is exactly what Rhonda wanted, because if Rhonda wanted it to be different, she would have changed it. So by having these stale documents, we have life changes in 20 years. So my kids have grown up, and in my will, I might have that they get it at 18, and lucky me, I've done well in life, and now suddenly they're going to get these big inheritances, and they'll buy Trans Ams, and waste it. So, sorry, Trans Ams. So.
Do they still make Trans Ams?
Well, see, I'm dating myself. It's like, to me, the ultimate groovy vehicle. I mean, Don Johnson had one.
Yeah. I was more of a Firebird fan.
Oh, okay. Well, actually, MGs, but we digress. So I think if we think about that and we go, well, jeepers, those documents don't reflect my wishes and they don't reflect my current circumstances. And again, one of the happy miracles is that a lot of our clients have started with businesses that have nothing in them. And at that point, everything was lovely and we had big mortgages. And now those businesses have done extremely well. So whether it's the thinking about the tax planning that we do or the gosh, what's my next chapter, we need to collaborate and work together, because that in every other aspect of our lives, we're so good about updating the documents, but I might have, for example, a unanimous shareholder agreement that was in place when my partner and I had nothing, and now we've done really well, and we don't get along super well. Our spouses, not so good, and we're looking at maybe retiring, and so now who are we going to sell to? And we're kind of tense over one of them. My partner wants his kid to be involved, and I don't think his kid's the right person. And so that unanimous shareholder agreement is going to be deemed to reflect our current wishes when it's likely stale and can actually cause us more damage than maybe even not even having one.
Just a quick follow-up on that before we continue. How do you determine the right rhythm to consider updating? Like, obviously, I think most of us can agree it probably makes no sense to start with something and then do nothing, and then at the end receive what you started with. But what's a reasonable rhythm, or what's that milestone or check-in point that may not always be actioned, but there's a conscious decision at that time?
Excellent point. Two answers. Number one is anytime you have any big change in your life. So whether that be a separation, that's a really common one. If you separate from your partner, the law mostly deems that you still want those documents in place until you get a divorce. So in that separation time, so any big changes, or your kids are launched, or if you discover your kid has a disability or an addiction or something like that, obviously big events like that, or you're anticipating a retirement or a succession or a sale. But short of that, the default typically we say about every 5 years. Because then you kind of do a refresher to say, oh, is this what I like? The executors I pointed were my brothers. Oh, my brother's getting old and my kid's doing pretty well. Maybe I'll change it so my kid is the executor, that kind of thing.
Perfect. Sean, we think about the blind spots. There's a bit of a psychological, emotional barrier that happens. Do you want to maybe just talk with us about, how do you start the planning process early with the psychological barrier that might hold people back?
So I would say, like, really, for a lot of people, when we're talking specifically about the retirement and transition piece of the planning, it's a little bit ironic because most of us got into business for ourselves, for the success that comes with it, for the personal life benefits, to have a good retirement, to spend time with our family. But then the identity becomes the business. So as your business becomes more and more successful, you spend more time at work, which we've all done too much of. You really become your business. So your focus becomes those day-to-day challenges that you're dealing with. It becomes how to expand, how to do that next challenge at work. And that's what you're doing good at. So that's where you're getting your success. So you don't really want to stop. And a lot of the business owners, Jeff, they'll find themselves kind of seeing it as like a negative to start planning the wind down of the business, to start planning what's next. They don't really see past the vision of the business anymore because it's what they are. And they think that, talking about a wind down, it almost seems like failure because you're moving in the opposite direction. Like that upward momentum has been the positive in your life. It's been your success. So now to think about leaving it, it's a big challenge. And I think a lot of the business owners get so focused on their identity being the business, they lose anything that comes after a lot of the things outside of it, which is usually the whole reason we got into business for ourselves in the first place.
Yeah, I think sometimes, like, I know a lot of business owners that are so in the weeds, right? That they actually don't even feel successful.
Yeah.
Right?
That's true
They
too.
don't actually. They are. They don't have.
They live hungry.
They live hungry. They've danced with bankruptcy 3 times, right? But that doesn't mean that that's what their current state is, right? What do you see, Sean? Just one quick follow up on that. Like, what do you see as something that helps owners, reduce fear and take some action that'd be helpful for themselves in this situation?
Well, I'd say it's twofold, and one kind of comes in the business and one comes on the personal end. For the business, it's really actually having some of that coordinated planning in place. Whether it's that you're going to sell the business or if you're looking to, have like an employee takeover or whatever it might be, or even your kids are going to transition into it, having a plan of how the business is going to continue as a success, I would say is really big. Because again, if your identity was the business and you're starting to separate yourself from it, you want to know that your baby can keep going. So having a really good plan and having the right people in place, we find to be really big. And then honestly, the second one sounds a little corny, but visioning. So getting back to that vision you lost for your personal life. What are you going to be doing after? What are the benefits for your kids, your wife, your husband, your family? How are you going to enjoy that transition period? So really, I think it's having a vision both for yourself and the business, knowing how the business is going to move forward and seeing what's next for yourself as the business owner.
All right, let's keep going. Sean, just on the coordination of professionals. Obviously, we have a great panel here today. But talk with me about what do you see as how do you see the best practices as sharing and collaboration with the client, especially across multiple disciplines like we have here today?
So I'd say that's instrumental in the success of a business owner through the lifetime of the business, as well as during the transition period. So we work very closely with KWB and Field Law to facilitate a full financial plan. When it comes to the other pieces of the plan, again, if we weren't working with them all the time and they weren't working with us, there's little pieces you miss because you're looking at the client's plan very one-dimensionally. So as the financial planner in the group, we're looking a lot at the income, the investments, the things going forward. We might miss, certain pieces of the accounting world or the legal world that we're not versed in it. We're not doing CE credits in it every day. We're not going to every conference. We're not at the forefront. So I would say really when you bring together the family office style collaboration, you remove conflict between your advisors. And you really get the full value out of your hard work in your business because we don't really leave any stones unturned. We challenge each other. And in doing so, we really bring forward the best advice that you can get from all the silos of the financial plan. So I think it really creates a lot of confidence for the client because they don't have their advisors arguing, hey, go tell the accountant this, go tell your advisor that. They have us coming together with one coordinated plan that gets you the best out of each wheelhouse. So
I'm going to go to a follow-up with Darren on this one, actually. How do you, if you think about some of the collaborations you've had, what helps the business owner? What do you see as helping that business owner get to a better space? Have you seen any successes in that?
Well, for sure. And I guess equally we've seen maybe, failures, if you want to call that, or lost opportunity because of, because of the lack of planning. But yeah, let's talk about the positives. And life has unexpected events that happen, right? And one of those can be even just the sale of a business, or the business owner is rolling along and having no intention of selling, but the too good to be true offer appears, and then all of a sudden you start to think about it. It's like, yeah, we should, we need to do this, and with the right planning in place and the right structure and understanding all of the implications, both of the financial, the legal, the tax, the accounting, and could have some substantial both savings, and it also makes the process just a little bit more on cruise control, right? And there's other parties even that are not at the table today that we would engage in the case of a sale of a business to assist. So 100%, like it's just so important. And I think there's always a little bit of fear. It's like, well, that's going to cost some money, right? If I want to start having these conversations now, I'm going to get a bill from my accountant, or I'm going to get, and unfortunately that is part of the reality, but need to understand that is an investment in the future, and that is the value. You have to have that conversation almost to understand what the value is that we're talking about at the end, right? Because on the flip side, we've had these situations where it's like, well, we could have saved you $500,000 if we had a conversation about this 3 years ago and started doing some planning, right? And maybe, and it wouldn't have cost that much. It wouldn't have cost you $500,000 back then. Yeah,
the ROI is still really good on that fee. Yeah,
absolutely, right. So that's really the message, and I guess the lesson from the trenches from my perspective.
So if you're a business owner, you're trying to select your team, your collaboration team, what are your recommendations to the business owner to find the best results and outcomes for themselves, their business, their partners, their shareholders?
Yeah, so I think it's finding advisors that are forward-looking, that have this mindset. I recently started working with a new client, and yesterday I was talking to him, and he running a successful business, probably could be netting $2 million a year profit, and between me and some of the other people on our team that he's been engaged with, he's just thrilled, and he's like, it's just wonderful to have people that understand where I'm at. They're asking questions that nobody's ever asked before, and they're good questions, and they're causing me to think and process. And he's just very engaged in the process. He had, in this case, an accountant for the last 10 years, and the accountant was asking him to sign his tax return and come back next year. To sign this tax return and come back the next year. So I think it's finding the advisors that can guide you through that process and through that thinking. And then when you find one of them, and it could be a Sean, it could be a Rhonda, it could be a Darren, ask them who, if you don't have somebody in the other disciplines, ask them for, a referral and advice, because I know this is important, and I work with people, and that also know that this is important, and we can assist in bringing people to the table.
I think it's a bit bit corny, but I like to think of it as we all want to be seen. And when we think about working with our advisors, we think our story is pretty cool. And we want our advisor to think our story is cool. And I think there's a level of mutual satisfaction that we get with our clients when we are all focused on helping this client achieve whatever it is that their goals are. And so intuitively, I think we actually, all humans can pick up on that when we feel like the advisor sees us and is curious. And I think of it, the collaboration is like, I had an eye appointment recently, and they have those fancy things where they have the different lenses all separate, and then it's kind of, each one is kind of helpful, but it's kind of blurry, but then they do something and it all clicks in, and then you get this nice clear middle section, and the sum is greater than parts. So each piece has a component, but together we create a stronger solution, and it's fun for us and it's fun for the clients when they feel satisfied that, and it gives, to the point you made earlier about fear, it reduces the fear when they feel that their concerns are seen and heard.
So Ron, I'll shift gears a little bit and talk about legal legacy readiness. What do you see some best practices? I think you used the word fire drills.
Right.
Scenarios that you would see recommend to business owners to protect their business, both unexpected and planned transitions.
Yeah, and the term fire drill is kind of a popular notion. You'll remember back when we were in grade school where we all had to do trump out, and usually they picked the -30 day and we all had to trump outside. And even now, working in an office tower, they do it to us sometimes. And anyone that's in the risk management business knows that the notion is that don't wait till an emergency to do your evacuation plan or your whatever. Practice it so that in times of stress that it's much easier to go through, and also in practicing in times of non-stress, then you'll notice the gaps in your planning, and you'll be able to fill those gaps as best you can so that in a time of crisis it'll be easier. And I deal with families that are going through incapacity issues with loved ones. Alzheimer's, as many of us know, every 3 seconds around the world, another person is diagnosed with dementia or Alzheimer's. So it's really, really on the rise, and it's just the reality. We're living longer, but we're living with incapacity. So that's a really common one with business owners and loved ones around it. And it's a very stressful process. So you're in a heightened state, so your decision making might not be at its best. And then obviously dealing with death, and we all hope that death comes later, but one just never knows. So doing fire drills, although it sounds dreary, my hope is that by going through, okay, if I lose my capacity, what documents do I have in place? Who's going to look after what? Then I'll actually walk it through and find out. And in a lot of the planning, I do that when I'm talking with clients. We're actually talking through. So if I have a business owner, two of the really key documents, obviously you need a will when you die, but to the Alzheimer's point, you absolutely need to make sure power of attorney and personal directive really reflect your current wishes, because we can live a long time in an incapacitated state. Power of attorney deals with your finances. If you're incapacitated, personal directive deals with your health care. And having those coordinated. So if I'm a business owner and I have a stroke, so it's a sudden thing, or I have dementia that progresses, then who's going to look after my business interests, and who's going to look after my personal financial interests, and who's going to make healthcare decisions? And to the stale documents point, maybe when I was first starting out, I appointed my spouse to be that person. But my spouse isn't involved in my business whatsoever. And so now suddenly my business partner is going to be dealing with my spouse for 10 years while I'm incapacitated. So the tension there could be great. So if we go through a planning scenario to say, okay, how does that work? Maybe we can see where we need to think that through. And maybe the unanimous shareholder agreement says, what happens if I'm incapacitated? Maybe the buyout price automatically is triggered, and now my spouse gets a quarter of what the value of the business is now. So looking at that and making sure that we've got that in place is super important. And healthcare can cause a lot of tensions too, because the law has changed a lot in our thoughts towards care when we are suffering. and you all have read and heard about medical assistance in dying, and it's changing a lot. And by doing our documents and putting our wishes in those documents, it's going to be a tough chapter for our loved one if they have to make hard decisions, whatever it is. But it's an attempt to keep the burden and the moral responsibility on our own shoulders and somehow relieve a bit of the burden on the person we've appointed to make that decision. So our voice continues to be heard, and we're trying to relieve the stress on our loved ones.
Darren, over to you. How do you see business owners having to align their continuity plans and their personal plans and what is your perspective on this conversation?
Yeah, so again, that's a big question and a good one. Probably the most important thing is to, first of all, have a plan, but then communicate that plan to the sort of key stakeholders, right? So that, if you're talking in the concept of succession with family or succession to employees, it's having that conversation, having everybody understand what your intentions are. And you need to. I'm going to back up a little bit. I think most people want their legacy to be that the family lives on happily ever after thereafter, right? And ironically, I've had a few conversations with the clients, and they're like, "Well, it's not my problem because I won't be here." Which is true, but it can create lots of problems. And most people, want their children, the siblings to all get along, have, continue on with strong family relationships. And because of a lack of understanding of mom and dad's wishes, out of, the conversation between what's fair and what's equitable, because fair is not equal to equitable necessarily. And maybe there's a child that is more involved with the business and is going to take the business. You're talking about estate matters. How do you balance out from a financial perspective the estate? I had a really interesting, case that I've worked through where a farmer unexpectedly passed. This son who's 19 was intended to take over the farm. Has 2 daughters. Well, the farm, of course, is a very asset-rich business, right? So how do you make that fair between the three? A miraculous family, and that they've come together and they've solved the problem, but it potentially was a problem if one of them wanted to make it a problem, right? So everybody having a good understanding of what the intentions and the reasons are, and I think the reasons often go to improve the understanding, right? So that's probably the big thing. But then again, it's coming back to the conversation we had, just making sure everything's aligned, right? Because if it's, if your idea is this, but your will says that, or your shareholder agreement says something else, and so one party is reading one and having an understanding of what they think the world or your plan looks like because of this one document, but it's inconsistent with others and others' views, that can really be a problem.
I'll transition one more time here to Sean. So taking that into context, how do you go beyond the plan, manage execution, maintenance? What does maintenance mean to you, Sean?
So we find for most clients that you're going to need to set regular reviews, and you're going to need to set some type of accountability points. So we all know, it's nice to say, hey, we're going to get here in 10 years. But really, you eat an elephant one bite at a time. So the annual review piece is going to be more because, everything changes on such a rapid basis these days, like whether it's the tax act changing, that's going to affect your plan down the road, whether it's the investment marketplace, whether it's your own business or things in your personal life, or like Rhonda said, what you wanted 20 years ago isn't necessarily what you want today. So you need to come in every year just to see from our perspective what's changed, what advice you might have to push the plan forward, and are you meeting those accountability metrics that we've set for yourself? Do we need to adjust things going forward? And a lot of times that might be because we need to make small adjustments in order to achieve the goal. Or in a lot of the cases that we're finding with our clients, it's been a good couple of years for a few of them. It might be that you're ahead of your goal. So it might be, you get to celebrate a little bit more, you spend a little bit of more money on yourself, or maybe you're getting to that retirement point early, or, buying that vacation home early. So for two reasons, I guess. It's good to make sure you're on track and we're doing everything we can to achieve the plan. But sometimes it allows you to enjoy the planning a little bit more. So we really think that they should come in every year and work on the plan. That's why we call it a living plan, is it's not, set it and forget it. And, we built a plan, it's going to achieve everything down the road. The plan is actually only as powerful as its maintenance. So if we don't get together and review it annually, 20 years down the road, you might have hugely overshot your goals, great, or you might not have what you need, in which case you're probably going to be pretty upset. So we find those annual reviews to be pretty integral to the success of the plan.
I read a great quote by James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits, and his quote was, we don't rise to the level of our goals, we fall to the level of our systems. And what you're suggesting, that kind of annual review, is that structural piece so that we can get to the goals.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of changing pieces, right? Like whether, again, it could just be your goals, your wishes, your personal life, or it could be the tax act, the investment marketplace, changes to how the law works. It is what it is, and you don't want to keep yourself knowledgeable in all those areas. That's why you bring in the experts, so you can still do well in your day-to-day business while we stay on top of that.
So we'll transition to closing, and then we'll open it up for questions. But Darren, I'll start with you. What's one question every business owner should ask their accountant, their lawyer, their planner before the end of this year?
I think they want to just ask the question: does my plan make sense for what my objectives are, right? And it's really more of it's a question of themselves, and which then translates into the search for that information, from their advisors, right? But it's taking some ownership over it. You may have excellent advisors that are, like Sean says, saying, hey, we're going to do a touch-in every year. We're going to ask these questions, right? We want to make sure that things are updated, but you may not, right? And not taking ownership over that process as the business owner, really that responsibility lies on you, right? So it's I just start asking those questions.
On the same question to you, what would be your one question that every business owner should be asking?
I'm going to be bratty and give you 3 questions, but they're sub-questions, so it's one full question. First thing is, who have you got appointed in your documents to make decisions for you if you are incapacitated or dead? Second question is, do you like your choices? And third question is, do those people know, and do they know what your wishes are, and does it actually work?
And to follow up that is, are they the right person, or do they have they have the knowledge and the understanding or the mindset to actually do that, execute on your wishes?
My brother who's 85, maybe he's not the right guy to step in and handle my business, right?
And Sean, same question to you. What's one question that you think business owners should be asking?
I would ask again, am I happy with my advisory team, and did they understand my intentions? So beyond the people that you're appointing, again, does my lawyer understand what I'm trying to achieve in the end goal here? Does my accountant and does my financial advisor? Because a lot of clients come in and they start trying to take advice based on the numbers, and they're not really thinking about the heart of the matter, which is all the small, minute goals they want to achieve down the road. So I would say, have I clearly conveyed my intentions to my advisory team, because that's the only way we can make the plan personal and make it fit the clients.
And then I want to go to Rhonda, because Rhonda said something really beautiful in our prep on this. What was your final piece of advice for a business owner to transition, to start the transition journey?
Well, my idea came from, I went to the Matart Conservatory the other day, and there's these amazing flowers that are in bloom, and there's one plant that only blooms every 7 years or something like this. So everyone's just, oh, this is amazing. And I was thinking a lot about it, and I was thinking, why do we find the beauty of flowers so enticing? And I was thinking part of it is because we know they don't last. And underneath of all of what we're talking about is the reality that we're all mortal. We're all going to die. And it's not an easy thing to face. But if we think about the way we love a flower, why can't we love our life that way? Because what we're doing is we're saying, yes, my life won't last, and that makes it even more beautiful. So instead of being fearful of our mortality, let's celebrate the beauty of our mortality.